I'm Madison Mary and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, please don't hesitate to click the subscribe button down below. And without further ado, let's get into the mid-year book freakout tag. So if you're not aware what the mid-year book freakout tag is, it's basically a tag that happens around about June, July every single year in which you answer a bunch of different questions. I will leave the original creators tag down below if you do want to check it out, but I'm super stoked. There are 13 questions, at least that's the one I clicked on. I feel like every year there's like 2 or 3 different variations of it just by like 1 or 2 questions, so we'll see which one I have. The first question is, as always, what is the best book you read in 2021 so far? And for me, I was going back and forth because there's actually 2 books I'd probably say for this. And that would be Jay's Gay Agenda by Jason June and also Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. Jay's Gay Agenda is a YA gay romance and Legendborn is a YA urban fantasy. It is also an Arthurian retelling. I love both of these books. I talk about them in detail in the vlogs that they're in and also in my May wrap up. They're both mentioned towards the end because they are 5-star reads, but I love them so much. Jay's Gay Agenda made me laugh out loud. It was such a feel-good read. It literally boosted my mood just by reading it. I could not put it down. It was just sunshine in a bottle. I was squealing the entire time. The romance is adorable in it. It's super sex positive and it is also gay as hell and it's full of a bunch of different messy gays. Legendborn, on the other hand, is a lot more emotional. Our main character, Bree, lost her mum in a car accident and throughout the book she's dealing with that grief and trying to come to terms with it. At the same time, she's got like a little bit of a budding romance in it that's really sweet and pure. There's also a lot of magic and mayhem that goes on in this book. Like I said, it's an Arthurian retelling and I absolutely adored this way that the retelling went. It was quite unique. I love the whole idea of how the Merlin magic worked in it. The guy who is the Merlin of this like society, I loved him so much. I'll mention him again later, but freaking loved him so much. But I would highly recommend both of these. They're definitely worth for you to check out and 2 of my favorite books of this year so far. Now for the best sequel, this happens every single damn year. Every single year I get to this question and I sit here and I go, I haven't read any sequels. I know, what am I gonna do? But then, okay, technically I read A Quarter Soul Flames and I did really love that. But I then was like, oh my God, I forgot. In January, I read the entire Bridgerton series. There is a vlog for it. Those were all sequels. And so I was like, well, oh my God, perfection. So my favorite sequel would be It's in His Kiss by Julia Quinn. This is the second to last Bridgerton book. It follows Hyacinth and I freaking love this one. She was hilarious, really fun. There was like a slight kind of mystery going on in this one. The romance was just hilarious. The way our 2 love interests were just so much fun. Definitely one of my favorites. I will admit though, if you do decide to pick up the Bridgerton series, after the first 3 books, you do need to read it in order because the timelines begin to overlap and like a lot of the stories do. So that is just my one piece of advice. Sometimes in historical romances, you can read them out of order, but I find especially with series like this that are like 12 books long, it gets to a point where it's like, okay, you have to read them in order. Otherwise, like you just miss out on some of the really fun details. But I really love this one and the epilogue for this one. So satisfying. Such a satisfying conclusion. Number 3 is a new release that you have not read yet, and for me that's going to be Neon Gods by Katie Roberts. I'm so excited for this. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling, and it's set in the idea that like all the gods of Olympus are kind of like Hollywood stars, like that's the way that they're revered in society. And you know, the title of like Hades, Persephone and things like that are like passed down to certain people, and Hades in this is actually bisexual and it is also a grumpy ex-sunshine romance. I'm so excited for this. I know it's also like a little bit kinky too and I'm just so stoked. Katie Roberts does the best stuff and it's so awesome to finally see her be traditionally published because, you know, sometimes in traditionally published books you don't really get that high level of steam, but like I have found that Source Books Casablanca does not shy away from, you know, adding their steaminess into their books. So I'm really excited for this one. For most anticipated release for the second half of the year, Act Cool by Toby McSmith and also Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. If you're not aware, Margaret Owen is one of my favorite authors. She wrote The Merciful Crow duology, which I adore, and Little Thieves is a Goose Girl retelling. I'm so excited. The Goose Girl is one of my favorite fairy tales of all time. I feel like we don't see it talked about enough. Goose Girl by Shannon Hale was one of my favorite books as a child, and that's another Goose Girl retelling. And then Act Cool is by Toby McSmith, who wrote Stay Gold, which is one of my favorite books of 2020. Made me cry like a child. So bad. Loved it, loved it. So you're following August, and he is an aspiring actor. He's also a transgender male, but his parents refuse to let him transition, and he has just gotten into this performing arts school in New York, and he's really excited to go to it, and his parents will allow him to go to the school and stay with his aunt in New York under one condition, and that is the fact that he cannot transition. And so August is now really struggling because there are these roles that he wants to take on in the school plays and all these kind of performances, but like, how does he do that if he cannot actually be the gender that he is? And so that's a huge part of this. I know it's going to be super hard hitting. Toby Smith always gets me in the feels, and so I'm so excited for this one. Biggest disappointment, Meet Cute Diary. I was so excited for it. It was like a 5-star prediction for me, but the majority of this book focuses on a really toxic relationship that is not endgame, and that's this toxic relationship takes place for like a majority of this book, and the main character is pretty unlikable and judgmental and selfish, and he doesn't like end up redeeming himself by the end of the book and like accepting that like he made these mistakes, and I don't like that. Like, I can get over an unlikable character if they come to terms with the fact that they did mess some things up, but he never really apologizes for the things that he did, and he did some really awful things. So biggest surprise, I would say probably Ivan by Sophie Luck. I participated in the Mafia Romance Readathon. I have an entire vlog for it, and it was my first time reading a Mafia romance, and I was really terrified because I have had great experiences with dark romances and really bad experiences with dark romances, and I really didn't know where this was going to go. So I picked it up just on a whim, just to be like, oh, let's see how it is. And I loved it. I loved it. Initially I gave it 4 stars, and then the next day I was like, nah, it's a 4.5. And then the day after that I was like, nah, it's a 5-star read. I loved it. It's a mafia romance. It's a Russian mafia romance set in Russia and St. Petersburg. And our main character is an assassin, and she goes to assassinate the hero, who is the head of a Russian bratva. So it's really awesome, very action-packed, kind of hilarious, the banter that they have with one another, and I loved it. Now, number 7 is favorite new author, debut, or just new to you. I'm gonna go with a debut author first, and my favorite new debut author is, of course, Jason June. Like, duh, I'm in love with Jason June so much. Like, I would shout about them from the rooftops if I could. I can, but I'd probably get yelled at, so I'm not gonna do that. And then a favorite new to you author would probably be Anna Huang. She has published a couple books before, but I just read her book Twisted Love this year, and I loved it. It was a 4 out of 5 stars for me because I wasn't a huge fan of the sex scenes in it, but Twisted Love is a dark romance, and it was just like, it took me by surprise. It's another surprising read for me, honestly. I was kind of hesitant going into it because, you know, there's a slight age gap to it, and it's a darker romance with some of the things that go on in it, and, you know, I was a bit hesitant, but I ended up really enjoying it, and it's actually what has led me to kind of be more open to reading dark romances and kind of exploring the genre more. So I got to give huge props to Anna Huang, and I'm so excited for the next book that is coming out in that series because it is a princess and bodyguard age gap romance, and oh my god, I cannot wait for it. Like, princess, bodyguard, age gap, like, oh, come on, definitely check her out. So, newest fictional crush, this is when we're gonna go back to Legendborn, and that is gonna be Sel from Legendborn. He is the Melon character. He starts off super unlikable, he's so closed off, he's like a morally grey sorcerer, and I have learned from reading Legendborn by Tracy Dion and Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim that some of my favourite characters are morally grey sorcerers. There's just something about morally grey sorcerers that just get me right in here and get me going. I love them so much. I attach myself to them, and it just, oh, they're so good because they start off really snarky and rude and power hungry, but then like they soften just for like the heroine, and like, you know, the whole morality chain trope kind of comes in then, and it's so good. It's so good. I love them. So I love Sel. I cannot wait to see him more in the next book. Number 9 is newest favorite character, and this was really easy to pick, and that is going to be Mariah Cooper from Destiny's Embrace by Beverly Jenkins. This is a Western historical romance. Mariah is amazing. She starts off, you know, she's been constantly emotionally and physically abused by her mum all her life, and then when she finally does escape her mum's clutches and moves to California, she decides that, you know what, she's not going to take shit from anyone anymore, and she's going to, you know, be, you know, a kick-ass person, and she's going to be confident. She's going to, you know, be her own independent woman. And she does that, and she kicks the asses of every man around her. She's like so amazing. I also love the mother in that book. I cannot remember her name, but she's also a new favorite character of mine. Like, Beverly Jenkins just writes some of the best historical romance heroines. So if you are in the mood for like a really strong, a really like fiery, and like a woman who will like back and like fight back against the men, and who are very sure of themselves and like, this is what I want, and if you can't give that to me, then I don't need you. Oh, those kind of heroines, definitely pick her up. A book that made you cry. Now, this took me a hot second because I actually don't think I've like full-on sobbed this year from a book, which is strange because I actually had a handful of books last year where I was like, yeah, I cried like a child from these books. But I haven't really like cried in any books this year, but I do know 2 books that I did tear up in. The first of that is When He Was Wicked by Julia Quinn. This was one I was maybe gonna put earlier for like a favorite sequel, but I was like, oh, I'm using it later. And like, to me, they're exactly on par with one another for how much I love them as a sequel. So When He Was Wicked is a Scottish historical romance that is in Julia Quinn's Bridgerton world. And it is a romance between a widower and her dead husband's cousin. And I love this romance. It was so slow burn. There was so much angst and tension and mutual pining between our characters. I was just like, the entire time I was like, get together, get together, get together. But the reason why it made me cry is because our heroine has a lot of struggles with infertility and miscarriages throughout this book, and it was just very emotional to read that, and so I did cry. And then the other book was Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. There was a scene in this that reminded me of something that like I'd gone through myself with just people in my past, and so I did tear up from that. A book that made you happy. Jay's Gay Agenda by Jason June. Here's the thing with this stuff is like, if you have a favorite book, it tends to fit like a lot of the damn prompts. So I'm going to pick something else for this. Okay, so I got up to go grab a manga to tell you about because I really do love this manga, so why not just chuck it in for this? I don't have to just choose the books for this tag. So a book that made me smile the entire time, with it really made me happy, a manga that did, is Sweat and Soap. This is going to be featured, oh, has it come out yet? I don't know. I'm pre-filming a lot of videos because I'm moving at the end of June, so I don't really know when everything is coming out respectively to one another, but this will be featured in an upcoming manga video. But Sweat and Soap is a josei manga. It means that the characters are adults, they're working adults, and it is romance. It does have a little bit of slight steam in it, but basically it's about this woman who sweats profusely, and she's always been very self-conscious about that, and she works at this cosmetics company that specifically, you know, makes different soaps and bath things like that, and she really loves working there. And then there's a guy who works there who is like the head scent maker, like he creates all the different smells of the perfumes and the candles and things like that, and he comes across her, and it's their romance, and it is hilarious and sweet, a little bit fetishy, but I adore the crap out of it. I cannot wait to read more. And then for the most beautiful book that I have bought or received this year, I'm gonna go with one that I bought myself because it was so beautiful. Lauren Lust by Carla Nicole. This is an adult male-male vampire romance. It is slow burn, but then when things pick up, it gets extremely hot and steamy and sexy. There is no like serious blood play in this if that is something that triggers you, so you are safe. I adored this. It was so amazing. This is indie published, and I do not see enough people talk about it. It is just so amazing. So we're following Nino and Haruka. Haruka is very straight-laced, very serious, doesn't really let people in. He's very cold and closed off. But then when he meets Nino, who is this complete utter cinnamon roll to the max, he like starts to open up and like let loose, and the two of them together are just so perfect, and I can't get over it. Oh, I love this world so much. I love it. And there is a plot that goes along to it, so it's really good. And then lastly, it's what books do you need to read by the end of the year? All my arcs. There's honestly so many that I need to get to, but like life. Like hopefully by the time I actually post this, I have read Destiny's Surrender because it's on my June TBR. I have bought, I think, 100 historical romances this year. I need to read some of them. So my historical romance buying is out of control, and whose fault is that? Jess, Lacey, and Lisa's. also Avery's fault, and Jessen's fault. So blame those 5 ladies for the reasons why I buy too many historical romances. There's also like a couple of bookstagrammers that I also am friends with who are huge historical romance readers that are the reasons why I also buy too many, like, anyway, that is it for the mid-year book freakout tag. If you did enjoy it, please hit the like button down below. If you want to see more of me, please go to my channel, and until next time, thanks a bunch everyone, goodbye!